So,
Oh, we're on, I think.
good evening. It's Thursday evening, the 21st day of March. For the people up north, it's the day of spring, right? Margaret?
Actually, spring arrived. Didn't it
Oh,
arrive
well, yeah.
yesterday evening?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
arrived earlier,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
let's call it 21st of March,
Mm.
the day of spring. And so we suspect getting warmer as the days go by. In the
Well,
Car- uh,
you know, it's
in the
been up and
Caribbean,
down.
right? In the Caribbean, we've had fairly good weather, and we've had another day of beautiful weather, I suppose. But folks, it's time for Mek We Chat, the Thursday evening get together, like the rum shop, I say, and we chat on matters that we think are important for you to pay attention to, from the news around the region, around the world, and right at home wherever we are. I'm Jerry George. Thanks for joining us. George Grant is at the controls as usual. Margaret is there in New York. Catherine in London. Beverly, producer, is there in Grenada. And we hand it over to her to tell us what she has been churning up for this evening's discussion.
Jerry, Jerry,
Yes, George.
could you hang on a sec? Just give me half a minute before you get to
Sure.
Bev. You know, I I don't know if you noticed I was peeking a little while ago. Just about a minute before we went on the air, I was straining my eyes because it seemed to me that one, I wasn't seeing Beverly, and two, it seemed like the camera was under somebody's bed. And I'm wondering, seriously, I'm wondering who the heck put the camera under the bed. Bev, was that you? Did the camera fall from you?
Well,
Oh, but Jerry.
I don't know what you saw, George, but it definitely was not under the bed. So,
Bev,
nada.
Bev, if you go back after the program, you go on back and take a look at the video and tell me if that doesn't look like something under
No, don't
somebody's
tell me it went
bed.
out.
Pardon me? What was that,
Didn't
Max?
go out.
Hey,
That didn't go out, did it?
what?
Okay.
It didn't go out?
Did it go out? No, it didn't go
No,
out.
no, 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 no.
Nah, I don't think so.
No, no, no. Anyway, good evening, Beverly, and how are you?
What? The images of under the bed didn't go out?
No, it seems not.
The video of under the bed didn't go out, but I was wondering
Okay.
whose camera is under the bed. And by the way, good evening, Catherine.
It wasn't
George,
under the bed.
I just want to point out something, George. I think you got a flashing light in the background.
What? Yeah, yeah. You know, tonight's a weird night. First of all, cameras under the bed. Secondly, my fluorescent bulb over my head here, making sweet eye at me. You know, blink, 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 blink,
It's
blink.
on its last legs. That's
Oh,
what it's telling
gosh.
you.
It's gonna be a long
I
night.
can't stand it. Once that starts like that, I have to take it out. It's so
Yeah,
noisy.
I can't cope with it. Yeah, it's really annoying. Yeah. Flashing
Oh,
lights, but-
yeah.
Anyway, so it's gonna be a long night.
Mhm.
By the way, I see we've already been joined by your pilgrim in constituency number 1, Carriacou. John. John is saying good evening to you guys.
Constituency number one.
Parish number 7,
Parish number 7. Yeah, well.
dependency number 1.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. So Bev, it's all yours.
Here
Aha.
he comes.
Here comes Ati.
Oh, great. I am so glad that Athi is here tonight
Ati is here.
because Athi, I'm just about to say what we are going to be talking about tonight. And we want to look at court judgments, 2 judgments we want to look at tonight. The York Lane judgment from the Privy Council and the elections petitions judgment from the High Court in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we have those two to look at, and then the other item on the agenda is the Antigua and Barbuda port saga, as I call it. Does anyone know if the port has been handed over as yet? But
everything is signed for sure.
That we definitely want to look at some of the things that the implications of this handing over of the port in Antigua and Barbuda to this London-based group. Right, so those are the items we'll tell you about upfront. You know, there is Brexit, which is turning the whole of Europe upside down, simply because you have a group of people who decide that they want to stay after the people vote to leave. So that is causing a whole heap of confusion over there in the UK. Catherine, Catherine has a front row seat.
Oh, yes.
So we may touch on a little bit of Brexit later on, but we want to start in the Caribbean tonight before we hot-foot it out of here. Yes, and the other thing is, you know, the United States has called for a meeting with some Caribbean leaders, and
tomorrow
that has been creating a lot of stupid discussion all over the place. And
I know, right?
I make no apology for using the word stupid in it, because I don't know what's the matter with our people at times. You know? So those are the things that we want to chat about tonight in this forum. So let us take it away. Perhaps we need to start in St. Vincent with those petitions.
Yes, these people that have no behavior. Go right there.
Bacchanalia people.
Margaret, that's called brought up.
I will not have that.
Bacchanalia.
I will not have that.
You know?
Anyway, folks, I have to say this morning I attended court. I haven't been in a courthouse for a long time, but I decided that I was not going to hear secondhand the judge's summation of his case. And for those people who don't know, since the elections of 2015 on the 9th of December, there was quite a bit of bacchanalia indeed over the results of the election. The government was returned to office with a one-seat majority, and that seat was queried because the New Democratic Party candidate claimed the seat was won by him with 6 votes. And after a lot of tululu, suddenly this seat, which should have only been won by 6 to 10 votes, was won with 300 votes. That led to a whole load of things, and long and short of it, we've had lawyers who have been cited for apparent bias in this case, judges who have recused themselves from this case, and now we have the final judgment today, in which the judge dismissed both applications, saying that he didn't find anything substantial in all the errors that he found. So, for example, he says that the ballot boxes were not compliant, that they were badly designed ballots, that the Form 16, which should go in to finalize the count, were missing, that some of the ballots were folded in such a way that they reveal the secrecy of the ballot. I'm reading his list there. The evidence of the breach of secrecy and partiality, those are the issues that he said he looked at. But he said in his estimation, none of those things amounted to anything that would have caused, that was changed the results of the election. Although the one thing he mentioned, that the OES did observe and did note the question of partiality in the way that some of the officials handled. It was, to me, it was a kind of disappointed. I didn't expect the judgment that came in, because I'm still of this opinion. I don't see Caribbean judges with that kind of, do I say balls? But the actual laying out of the case is what had me a little confused. Because I don't know how you could state all of these things, a whole catalog of them, and say that as far as you're concerned, they had nothing to do with the outcome of the election. I don't get it. I don't get it. But this is what it is. He quoted from one precedent. I can't remember the name of the precedent. I have to get the actual printed judgment. But he quoted from one case in the Caribbean from which he got his precedents. That's it. Having heard the judgment, the party took to the road, and there was quite some protests. So people calling the refrain being "No justice, no peace." Don't know what all that means, but they walked around town, blocked the roads for a while, made the Kingston very uncomfortable for the motorists in particular. The police were out, inclusive of the commissioner of police himself out there personally. But in the end, it all petered out.
As would be expected, you know, because in my head, there should have been a planned protest if there was going to be a protest, because everybody knew what the judge was going to say.
Exactly. And that's what, but the NDP should have had two strategies, two plans for yes and for no. Clearly they didn't.
I would not have had no strategy for yes, because I did not expect that judge to
I agree.
Any other
I
way.
agree now, but still, if you are a good planner, you still have to put to them the possibility.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand how the judge could cite all of those things and still come up with that final ruling.
He says that their mistakes is not in dispute. He says, but ultimately you have to ask yourself if, generally speaking, I'm reading from my notes today, right? The elections were free and fair. He used something that had me a little puzzled. He said, okay, so these are two constituencies that are contested, but there are 13 others where there's no contest. But how we know there's no contest? They never allowed, they asked to look in the ballot boxes, and that was never allowed. So how do we know that there aren't irregularities in the other constituencies? Not because they're not before the court means that you do the mathematics of 13 versus 2. Some of these things...
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I mean, it will be interesting to see when in fact, one of the things though is that he mentioned that the main man in this case was never presented to be examined. The respondents never put him on the stand. In fact, he left here months ago in New York. Okay, he mentioned that in a passing way that that one of the most important persons to the case is absent. But he said, you'll read more about that in my writing. But to my mind, if one of the most important persons is absent, how could you say it didn't? Because if he didn't do something wrong, why is he run?
Right. Now, Jerry, let me ask you: is this the end of the case, or can it be?
No, they're talking about appealing it. Yeah.
Where to Privy Council?
Well, it will. I suspect. I don't know. I think this has to go up to the
Caribbean.
Caribbean,
Okay.
yeah. OACS court. Then 3 judges will look at it. At the case.
Oh, I just smile. The judges in that instance just show a political ruling, not a legal ruling. Because you hear evidence. The electoral officials admitted that there are so many things that were not done according to the law. And you have an election which ended with a 1-seat majority. And you're going to sit there as a judge and say, you don't think you heard anything that would effectively change the outcome of the election?
Well, Beverly, worse than that. In one of the polling stations, 300 ballots that should not have been counted were counted.
You know, so where did these?
And so that alone, yeah.
That alone, in a situation,
that alone, yes.
In a situation, Mark, where even Peter Wickham, who did the polling on the station the night, said this seat can only be won between 5 and 10 votes.
No, that is not what even did it for me. You know, it's when. Who was it? The returning officer or the presiding officer said there were 39 extra counterfoils.
Yeah, counterfoils.
39 extra counterfoils.
That nobody know where the ballots are.
In an election that was this close.
Close,
Nobody
exactly.
knows where those 39 ballots are. And you don't think that that could have significantly affected the outcome of the election? An election which was that close?
This has taken away my confidence in the Caribbean judiciary. Whatever little I had left, trust me, no.
No.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
No, there you go. There you go. You know,
because you just, when there is an election and you go out to vote, we had this discussion right here a few weeks ago. You go out to vote and it's like your vote is worthless.
Yeah.
It doesn't count.
Somebody could determine the change what your vote is, and that is what it's going to do. It's going to stop people from wanting to go to vote.
Exactly.
Whether we like it or not, that is it.
That is exactly what's going to happen.
But
because
an interesting thing, no, Bev, hold your thought. An interesting thing that came to my mind today as the judge was speaking. In law, the public interest is what is always paramount. All right? Because if that's why sometimes the DPP will kill some cases, because if the case comes and the DPP doesn't feel that it has significant public interest, he just scraps the case, because public interest in law is important. It's the same thing with the case you're going to come to next in Grenada. The judges looked not just at the view of the person, but the public regard. There was nothing in this case that I found interesting that even brought into play what the public, how this affected the public. Nothing the judge said. And that had me a little kerfuffled, because I am thinking, okay, you saying all those things, but how did it affect the public?
Well,
True. Okay. Bev, I stopped you from saying something else though.
Yes, I was looking at it to say, when you mentioned, the fact that you have lost confidence in the judiciary.
What remains of it?
And it is something very telling, because it is the judiciary that is supposed to be the backbone of democracy. That is the final arbiter to say what is supposed to stand up in a country. That's the institution that is supposed to hold democracy together.
Yep.
When all else fails. But you have a judge who sits there, listens to argument, or, well, I don't know if he listens. A judge that sits there before whom arguments are presented. And at the end of the day, it's like, let's just pass that and go on. That happened in 2015. Why are you worrying about it now?
It's as if it didn't matter anymore.
Exactly. It didn't matter. Full stop.
It's sad.
All the shenanigans that I've seen around this elections, petitions, trial, since they were filed, how many years ago? 3 judges. This thing passed through 3 judges already. This is the 4th one.
Well, if you look at the appeals judges, there are 3 of those.
Right. So that is 7 judges. 7 judges. And the judges, the first time the matter went to the appeal judges, they said, take it back, deal with it expeditiously.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, when they're asking for it to be dealt with expeditiously, that was more than a year after the election.
Exactly.
You know? So you have an election, you have a government there sitting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines now that a large percentage of the population is convinced is an illegitimate government.
Mm-hmm.
And the court didn't think that it was important enough to settle the matter once and for all.
We ain't got them kind of judges.
Go in the court with one argument and you come out of the court with the same argument.
We ain't got them kind of judges at all.
Nothing has been settled except some lawyers earn some money and gone home a little richer than when they came.
And they're going to earn some more too.
Yeah, this is preposterous.
When are your elections constitutionally due again?
In
Next year?
next year. Next year.
So I guess you'll have elections before this resolves itself.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no two. And I think that is what they played. They did everything to prolong this case. Everything possible. They used every strategy possible to prolong this. So that they would be in office.
Total abuse of the system. Total.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely terrible.
It is. Because I said in another forum that the very least the judge should have done is to say, recount the ballots, take out the ballots which are obviously incorrect, illegal, because they are not ballots designed according to law. The design of the ballot is not something that anybody sit down and make up. It's stipulated what it should be.
Exactly.
So take out the ballots which are not designed according to law and count the rest of them. That's the very least he should have done.
Yeah, and Beverly's point really says, that's the only way to determine whether or not everything else that he pointed out had an effect or not.
Exactly.
You can't determine whether or not the outcome would be changed unless you count the ballots over.
Unless you count the good ballots.
Yes.
In fact, very early in the case, he didn't seem interested at all to deal with the question of the design of the ballots. Very early in the case, almost the first day, he made it known that he wasn't really interested in that.
And that's a fundamental piece of law.
But yes.
And you're going to sit there and say you're not interested in hearing it. So what did you come there to hear? The petitions, that's what the petitions are based on. That illegal ballots were used in the election. So if you sit there and you say you're not interested in hearing about the design of the ballots, how are you going to determine whether or not the ballots used were proper? I just don't get it. It's like the petitions case had already passed through 6 judges by the time it get to him. And it's like he just feel like he can't bother either.
Yeah, it seems to me that they were just going through an exercise for the sake of going through the exercise.
Yeah.
A waste of, public funds and time and everything else.
Well, maybe what we have done is given the prime ministers of our region the comfort that they will never be called out in these issues. And I think that is what is scary about it. They now have a comfort that this is not going to happen. You know what that does? Yes.
Is there anything in our laws that prevent a court from ordering a recount?
No courts have done that.
Okay.
Courts have done that.
Is the constituency in question the same one? That's I think I thought I heard you say that, in which there were these questionable ballots.
Yeah.
Okay.
300 of them.
What was the total number of votes cast in that constituency, Jerry?
I can't remember the total number.
It would have
but
been.
It's the smallest constituency. Yeah?
So
but there was some. Hold on. I really don't want to guess. I can't remember, to be honest.
4,000, 5,000.
Let's say that.
Okay.
But it's around 10, you're right, because around 10%, the 300 votes is about 10%. So I think you answered something there. Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at is this, we are dealing with a very elementary civilization in the Caribbean in the 21st century. But partnering that elementarity is a determined effort on the part of people like judges and lawyers and others to make it look like they have achieved a certain kind of flamboyant, civilization, a flamboyant professionalism. So something as simple and direct as recounting the votes does not appeal to a judge, does not appeal to the judiciary. How long do you think it would take to recount those ballots?
But Ati, in Jamaica, they had a similar problem. They recounted the ballots.
Absolutely. I'm just putting us in a slightly bigger picture, which is here we are, allowing a few miseducated, misguided buffoons parading as lawyers and judges to confuse an already confused population. And we are making a big deal about something which could be resolved in a couple hours, maybe an hour. It would take to count those ballots. And when I put that alongside the fact that in India recently they had 83 million new voters, and I juxtapose that with, look at how much valuable intellectual and other time we are investing in this kind of fruitless exercise of pretending to have a democracy, pretending to have a judiciary, pretending to have government. When in fact other developing countries with millions of people are finding ways to deal with it, and we don't know how to deal with a couple thousand votes. We couldn't resolve that. We couldn't invite a team of independent observers to oversee the recount of that particular thing. And
because they don't want it.
I know. So it gets to the point. So your loss of confidence and faith, and George's loss of confidence and faith in the judiciary and in the electoral system, is exactly what has happened in the Caribbean. And what was supposed to be an exercise in building up our confidence in our ability to govern ourselves and manage ourselves has become an exercise that has as its purpose one singular objective, which is to destroy any sense that we are able to run ourselves. And so that leaves, one or two little characters, one or two little Humpty Dumptys to run the place. And I don't think intellectually we have understood this, that there is a deliberate strategy to convince us that we are fools. And it is not a difficult thing.
Take note of that, because it is going to come back in the discussion about the Antigua port.
Yeah. And that's the point. The pattern has repeated itself consistently throughout the region, even at a greater degree of frequency. And yet we are fiddling with the same tools that they are using to unravel us, and we are still depending on those tools to reconstruct what we had. And so I smile in sadness at our predicament.
No, I guess you're right. You're right. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
But we'll take a break and come back, because there's one more thing that I would want to add to this.
Start the stride to a healthy lifestyle at the 2019 annual Pump It Up Family Fun Walk. There'll be more fun, more smiles, and more prizes for families and friends. Join us in Carriacou on April 7th at 4 p.m. as we walk from the Harveyvale playing field to the Hillsborough tennis courts, and in Grenada on April 28th at 4 p.m. from the Montrouge playing field to the National Cricket Stadium. Packages cost $20 per person for up to 2 individuals and $15 per person for groups of 3 or more. Come out in your numbers to help us raise funds towards re-establishing the Carlton Home.
Welcome home. Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company, tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive, motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary, public liability, professional indemnity, directors liability, and wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
Of Mek We Chat on a Thursday evening, and we started out looking at what has happened in St. Vincent and the Grenadines with the petitions, which have just spanned too much time in terms of the life of the elections and the government. In the broad population's mind, the case might have said one thing, but people quite much believe otherwise. Bev?
Yes, the whole judicial cycle of this case could have been done at the mention the time it would have taken. All that was needed was 1 day.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, 1 day.
From this thing was filed and went before the first judge, all he had to do was order a recount, and that would have put the matter to bed, put the matter
instantly.
to rest. Instantly. It happened in North Carolina in the United States when that election was disputed. They threw out all the ballots and said, look, we're going to have an election again. Let's settle the matter once and for all. So if there was a real concern and a real desire to have this put to bed in the minds of people, it could have happened and it would not have cost $100,000. But that is not the desire. The desire is for someone to hang on to what we tend to call power in this region.
Absolutely.
There's an opinion being expressed here by Kipling. I don't think it's a novel opinion, but it's worth hearing. He says that right now in most countries, the judges are mostly political appointees after making certain promises to be loyal. Well, there we have it. He who pays the piper calls the tune. So says Kipling.
It is a fact that judges are politically appointed in most cases. But one example I always use, is in the very United States. As crazy as that country seems, its judicial system works.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
And anybody, including the president who appoints Supreme Court judges, can be hauled before the court because the system works. And if any judge in the United States think they want to sit on that bench and make some political decision, they're going to get thrown off. They will not survive. So you can talk about judges being political appointed till the cows come home to roost. It's not a recipe that should give you corruption and biasness. They are.
You're right, Bev, and because it goes much deeper than that.
Artie, just hold.
Appointment, the political appointment of.
Artie, just hold on a sec for me, please. The people out there are complaining that there is some disturbance. I'm hearing a radio in the background. I don't know if you guys are hearing it as well, but the listeners are obviously.
I'm hearing it.
You're hearing it? Okay, so am I.
I'm hearing it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
Something playing in the background on somebody.
Oh, yeah, I heard it came and went a while ago.
Okay, right now it's gone. So sorry about that, Artie. Go ahead, sir.
So it's me. It's me.
Okay, go ahead, Artie.
No, I do apologize.
Okay, go ahead.
Sincerely. No, I'm just saying that it's not just the political appointment that is the problem. It goes much deeper than that. And we have in the Caribbean the capacity to ignore the deeper consideration. For example, those judges went to school. They went to law school. So we really need to re-examine the kind of legal education that we have been giving people. Is it a legal education with empirical competence, with bereft of moral and ethical competence? And then we must go further back. What kind of high schools did those people go to? What kind of families did they come from? What kind of communities did they come from? Because in a real sense, these judges and the problems that they seem to be supervising are really a reflection of a deep malaise in our society, just as the politicians and the politics is a reflection of that deep malaise. But we refuse to examine it. Because we didn't drop out of the sky. A judge didn't drop out of the sky. You can trace a judge's evolution and his journey or her journey. And you can see where, when given the opportunity as a high schooler to make the right decision, a tough decision, they did or they didn't. In university, when given the opportunity to do something that resulted in the broader benefit of the university or the school or the student body, they didn't or they did. And in other words, that is why in the US, to go back to Bev's point, this business of holding public hearings whenever any serious level appointment is being made and subjecting the candidates to the most penetrating kind of inquiry, not just by other lawyers, but by members of the public and persons who can ask to give testimony as to why this person or why not that other person. In other words, we have ignored the supporting institutions, which actually are the infrastructure of any civilization, any society. And we have only left ourselves with a zoom lens focused on the final product, which means that we don't see why we ended up with a set of judges who agreed to put aside all the legal oaths they take, the Hippocratic oaths, and some people will say the hypocritical oaths.
Absolutely.
You're right? And we don't see the forest for the trees. And I'm suggesting that's why we are headed in the wrong direction. We're not just not developed, people. We are headed in a situation of impoverishment, of failed societies, of abject poverty. That's where we are headed. And we are headed because the institutions that are supposed to put in place the safeguards that would prevent us from rolling back down that hillside have themselves become tainted, are tarnished, are directionless, are headless. And it's because that was the plan.
Mm-hmm. No, you passed over the nomination process, you know, just to cement in the minds of people that a political appointment is not like a political appointment in the Eastern Caribbean, where a prime minister just picks somebody and put them in a seat. There is a process.
True.
There is a process. So take, for example, the president. This person is the president's pick. He's not automatically put there. As you mentioned, the public grilling that he has to go through. And how many times have we seen, because I know a lot of people listening to us, they feast on US TV. How many times have you seen a president pick, end up in the dustbin, and they have to go for somebody else? Yep. It happens. So it is not a justification, and there would be no problem with a prime minister's appointment if there was some kind of process, some kind of transparency, and the people who are put in positions like the position of a judge, if they exhibited the kind of integrity that that position demands. Because today, in today's Caribbean, the entire justice system seems like it's made up for the people who are not able to represent themselves, who can't afford lawyers, who have no attachment to the trappings of what we call power or authority in the country. When these people go before the courts, they're at the mercy of the court. They get some ridiculous sentences for some minor infractions, things that should have been a fine or a suspended sentence. You see some heavy sentence, and then you see some of my fellow colleagues talking about courts sending signal and this and that, simply because this person don't have some kind of political connection. You know, they're at the mercy of the court. So it seems like courts are set up for certain people. We go to the law.
That's true, eh? That is true.
Yeah.
But you know, we are having exposure to evidence of what we are talking about here. And for example, there's a certain gentleman by the name of Herbert Volney, who was a member of the what's her name? The lady prime minister in Trinidad and Tobago.
Kamala.
Kamala. He was a member of her cabinet. He was, prior to that, a judge. He was a judge in Trinidad and Tobago. That guy, when he opens up his mouth, speaks with a crudity and a banality that you do not any longer even hear in the marketplaces
and the streets.
of the Caribbean. Yet he was a judge. And he's still a member of that fraternity. And you listen to another character who's vying, I guess, for some global award with this Herbert Volney guy, another guy called Anthony Astafan, who became, by some mysterious, demonic, cosmic kind of action, a senior counsel. And when he opens his mouth often, the guttural utterances are those of the worst kind of vagabond you could ever imagine. So now, if these are samples of the output of our legal education system. And I'm sure you guys have even more exciting examples that you can quote.
Oh, yes.
But if these are examples and samples, how in heaven's name do we expect people of such an ilk to, because they robe themselves and sit on benches higher than the rest of people in the room where they sit, will be able to manage and to guide a society towards justice, equity, fairness? It is not possible. It's like asking the earth to stop its rotation and to go in the other direction. That's more likely to happen than those guys becoming the kinds of judicial personalities and personalities that we could be looking up to. And think of the next generation of judges, the young lawyers. You mean that these are the models?
Yes, that's what they know.
That's what they are. And while we're on it, we segue into the next judgment that we want to look at this evening. And that's the one that came down from the Privy Council, denying access to the Grenada bar for a gentleman, a man by the name of Ewart Lane. He has a murder conviction coming out of the October 1983 killing on the fort in Grenada, which brought an end to the revolution. Several people were killed, including the revolutionary Prime Minister Maurice Bishop. The bodies have still not yet been revealed. The whereabouts of the bodies have still not yet been revealed. And Mr. Lane is one of a group of 17 that was convicted for murder for those killings. Now, fast forward to 2019, after much legal gymnastics, I'm looking for. After much legal gymnastics again, their life sentences, first of all, they were sentenced to death. That was commuted to life sentence, and then it was reduced to 40 years, and they ended up spending some 26 years in prison and were released. While Mr. Lane was in prison, he studied for a law degree. He came out of prison. He got certified by the Hugh Wooding Law School in Trinidad, and he applied to the bar through the Supreme Court, as is the process. The Supreme Court rejected him. He appealed. The appeal was rejected, and he went all the way to the Privy Council with the appeal. And the Privy Council upheld what the lower court said. No, we're not accepting you at the bar. And you know what, guys? These two judgments came out 1 week apart. And the talk on the street is, for the Ewart Lane judgment, they're glad it wasn't the CCJ, because they thought the general thinking is that if it was the CCJ, he would have been granted, the application would have been approved for him to access the bar. And with the SVG case, people are saying the same thing, that they would want it to go to the Privy Council, because if it goes to the CCJ, they have no confidence in the ruling they would get there. And we wonder why the referendum in November last year was rejected.
But hold on, Pepe, don't go too fast, because Guyana is now objecting to, what's his name again?
Sir
Francis Alexis.
Francis Alexis being a part of the constitutional case in Guyana that has to do with the elections. Why?
With no confidence.
Within a motion. Why? Because the judge before whom he is going to appear, he being a member of the jail, what again?
The Regional Judicial Legal Services Commission.
Because he is a member of that. They're saying,
And for that, for people who don't know what that is, it's the regional body that selects judges for the CCJ.
And these people don't see any problem. But the people in Guyana are saying, if he is appearing before this judge whom he has to select, how could there be justice? I mean, why do we have to tell people that this is just not tenable? Why? Why? I mean, one would think a person with the experience of Dr. Francis Selectis would never have to be dragged into this, would never have his name to be mentioned in something like this.
But
it's just...
First of all, Jerry, there has been contentions raised about his appointment to that body in the first place. Because while it is said that he was chosen by the head of the OECS, the OECS and the head of CARICOM to represent civil society on that commission, because again, it is a legal construct and one of the members has to be from civil society. And he was chosen by the heads of those two organizations as the person from civil society. And every single civil society organization in the Eastern Caribbean has said nobody consulted with them. Nobody asked them for a nominee. Nobody asked them to put forward anything. So how does the heads, these two heads, CARICOM head and OECS head, how do you two decide on who is going to represent civil society on the RJLSC without any consultation with anybody in civil society? How did you come up with this name? That question has been asked. No answer has been given. But he's there. And now here it is, the people in Guyana say, but you cannot come here and deal with this case because you are standing before a judge who hopes to become a judge in the CCJ. And they know that you sit on the commission to appoint them. And you want to go and stand before them to present a case?
I mean, I have a couple of questions. Just listening to this. Is the appointment to the commission a lifelong appointment?
I believe it has some, I would have to look back, I don't remember offhand, but I do believe it has to have some terms. Nobody can be appointed for life.
Well, unless you're a Supreme Court.
Yeah. The reason why I'm asking is because then you would probably always run up against that situation. So what is someone to do if they're serving on that commission? Does that mean that the person has to stop their law practice?
Yeah,
no, it's a tough decision.
They would have to make.
It's a choice. It's a tough decision.
That is of integrity that they would have to make.
That's right. You can't be choosing the person you're going to prepare before. There's just, what's the name book there I'm thinking about? Anyhow, it's gone from my mind. But you can't. No. It's just not right.
Exactly.
There's no excuse for that.
So if you're going to take up that kind of position, and I'm going to see if I can find the tenure before we through tonight. If you're going to take up that position, then yes, you should probably stop practicing law for the period until you're not anymore there.
No, I don't have a problem with that with that argument, but I just wanted to know because I was thinking if this was a lifelong thing, then it's something that someone has to think about. But I mean, if it's a term, if they're term appointments, then I guess one can place their practice on hold for the period that they're serving and resume after that time is done.
No, I just find it difficult, Margaret, to see how that could be. I have a problem, quite frankly.
Jerry,
it's human nature we deal with.
Jerry,
no, I get that. I don't have a problem with the conflict of interest question there, but I just wanted to know.
Jerry, a couple of people here on social media are also suggesting it's a conflict of interest.
Yes, it is a conflict of interest. To me, it is too glaring. And I am saying that when you have people of the hopefully experience and caliber, right? Should we have to say this? Should Guyana have should a lawyer in Guyana have to raise this objection? Really? Nah. I find that is too much. That is too much. Because if it told me, I couldn't. The fact that they have to raise it, I'll feel some type of my character right away. So I struggle with the fact that it has to get there.
That is true. That is true. You know, and that is. But in our Caribbean, tell you the moral fabric of this Caribbean is in serious danger, because these things don't seem to be a big thing to a lot of people. You know, they brush it aside and it's no big thing. Why you're making a fuss about that? And you say, but you should make a fuss about it.
Because
the elections here.
The institutions we have set up and have traditionally been set up in other societies and cultures to help keep our feet to the fire of integrity, they too have abandoned this mission for ethics and integrity. The churches in our region, when was the last time that there was a real championing by these, august institutions of the kinds of on the issues that we're talking about here? When in fact, prime ministers appointing their children as ministers and
wives
and whatever,
Yes.
So let's be clear.
There's a youngster, I posted it yesterday in St. Kitts, in a public speaking exercise in St. Kitts, used an illustration out of St. Kitts with damning precision. He called the name of the Prime Minister. He said the Prime Minister's name is Timothy Harris. He said I'll remind you, man.
I think there's a judge who
his sister is
something Harris,
position, yeah.
His other sister is something. His brother. I mean, what on God? And we've other people who telling us that the colonial masters did us so bad. At least the colonial masters have a little bit of decency, man. Cheese and bread. Now you find the easing in their families one by one. Son here, a wife here, a daughter here. We have a situation in St. Vincent right now, and coincidentally, it has to do with one of the same constituencies that was contested, where the post in that constituency bought lands for his wife, his daughter, his son, and his son-in-law. And residential lands were bought at 10 cents a square foot. How do we allow this to happen and continue? Why? And this was 2 days before the last elections. 2 days before the last election.
Oh my goodness.
And Artie and Jerry, notwithstanding what both of you have just said, it was only this morning that one of my guests was pointing out to me that at least there's a little ray of hope in the Caribbean, I think in Jamaica. You may have heard that, I think it's the Minister of Education, Bev, who...
was fired.
Well, fired, resigned, whatever. But the bottom line is, the man was held accountable. How is he the first? Tell me, how much of that stuff goes on here? And everybody buzzes about it for about 3 days and then gets swept under the carpet.
No, but here, the argument is these are just allegations, and the person is innocent until proven guilty.
But they never come to court.
And the person never come to court. They continue the commission, continue to collect the salary, continue to do whatever caused the allegations in the first place, and they just stay there.
I have to say this, that under Sir James Mitchell, 3 prominent people lost their jobs. One, the Attorney General. The other was a minister. who had leased a building, and he leased out portion of the building to government. Right? The opposition make us think he was asked to resign. And, that's it.
Jerry, I'm laughing because nowadays prime ministers and ministers build buildings intended to house government office.
Just give me a second there. I hear some commotion out there. 1 second there, please.
As if we don't have enough commotion.
They're coming to get Jerry.
Exactly.
No, but it is true. And in fact, do you know, I don't know if it's the case in other islands, but one of the largest landowners in some of our islands is the church, the Catholic Church.
That's true.
Right? And do you know that situation exists alongside people who don't have lands, can't afford to get lands, and they are members of that flock?
Of course.
So I'm, so you begin to put those little pieces of that puzzle together, and you understand how deep the erosion of that kind of society based on justice has taken place, and hence, and in many cases, I'm sure it's the case in all our islands, the churches have been significant contributors and participants in the education system. So what is being passed on here? Do as I say, not as I do.
And
is that the 12th commandment?
When you look at the preamble in the Grenada Constitution, it tells you, and I'm not being verbatim here, but it tells you that the constitution of the country is built upon a moral fabric which recognizes God. And we're not talking about no Christian God here, but you recognize God as a supreme being, and from that flows the moral fabric on which this constitution is going to be founded. So, and people nowadays will ask for, what is the definition of moral? Who decides what is moral? Blah, blah, blah. And all of the arguments will come up to tell you that I can do anything and say it is moral. And that's exactly why the Constitution said morality has to be founded upon a higher being than you. Because all of us will do anything and have no problem with it. It's not unethical, it's not immoral. We have no problem with it. But when you seek to look at a higher being and to determine morality from that perspective, then it is out of our hands. But we little people, we little grown gods, we don't like anything to be out of our hands. We want to be in control of everything. And we want to be in control of morality so we can determine what is moral and what isn't. So if I'm a prime minister, and since most of our prime ministers in the region are male, if I'm a prime minister and I want to put my wife in the cabinet, I don't see nothing wrong with that. So what are you going to use to judge me by? Morality is not defined in the law. Ethics not defined in the law. And if I want to give my son a job and my daughter a job, how are you going to tell me I'm immoral? By what standards are you holding me? Is your morality higher than mine? But morality is not determined by any of us. And the Constitution that we are supposed to be living by says so.
There's a certain Caribbean country which has about 5 female members of cabinet, of which the sitting prime minister is reputed to have knowledge of all 5. I mean biblical knowledge. Let us be very clear, and this is happening in full view of everyone. Everyone. In our country, everybody knows everybody's business.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so that is it. And so let's, if we take those things, we will see why people of other races, not even the white race, other races like the Chinese, consider us to be a lower order species because of the way we behave, how we cannibalize each other.
Yeah.
And to us, that has become our new norm.
New norm.
And so nobody who wants to recolonize and enslave us has to work as hard as the original colonizers and enslavers, We will do all the work for them, like starting CBI programs. It's the equivalent of the slaves, our forefathers, forging the iron chains, which were then put on their feet and on their necks. That is the equivalent of what we have today. It's not an iron chain; it's a CBI chain that we have forged and it's put around our necks, and we're being led out to the final pasture.
And soon to be a Silk Road chain, too.
Yes.
Yes.
Margaret, you got it, girl.
And in fact, Margaret, that is one of the reasons that Trump has used for his intervention.
Yeah.
That they have warned the Caribbean about that. So it's going to be some interesting days ahead, Very interesting.
So let's take a break and come back.
All right, guys. Just before we get back into high gear, Ati, it seems to me you've aroused some curiosity out there. Somebody here on social media wants to know who's the gentleman with the beard. I know it's not. I know it's not Beverly. I know it's not Margaret. I know it's not Catherine.
Just tell him it's your cousin, George.
Okay, Earl. He says he's my cousin. News to me, but you know.
But he is your cousin. Everybody's related.
Okay, okay.
Can't go wrong.
Anyhow, go ahead, guys.
Yes. So we had talked earlier about the RJLSC and the term of office. I believe it's 3 years that they're supposed to serve.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Thanks, Bill.
You are welcome. You are most welcome. Yeah, but before we went out, we did not strictly have that on our menu for this evening, to look at the all the information that came out in the wake of this horrible airline accident. But that's just another indication of how we have become as human beings, where the important things do not matter
or
anymore.
become expendable.
Yep, become expendable because there are other things more important, like money and climbing the social ladder.
I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to be sitting in Bowen's shoes right now.
No, sir. They got some real cool money to shell out, boy.
Yeah.
If they don't bring some criminal charges against them, because some of them charges is some crazy. Negligence, negligence.
They just launched their new 777. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you see, the problem with the 737, it is the war cost. There are 5,000 of them in flight and about another same amount in production.
Oh yeah.
So that's the war cost, and obviously we're trying to cut corners.
And something that's going to be worth keeping an eye on, the fact that it seems like the FAA could possibly be implicated in this whole thing.
Yeah. There's now going to be an investigation of one of these guys that are now working there, because apparently he was a former Boeing executive. So they are now launching an investigation into this guy.
It seems like apparently the FAA was sort of delegating responsibility for the certification to the Boeing company, which is, insane. The FAA is a regulatory body.
Exactly.
And I'm hearing on the side that apparently, the FAA doesn't have the resources to hire people who are capable of, making certain...
really? No.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, you're surprised because that money has to go to build a wall.
It's just too big-faced.
No, I'm not kidding. He is pretty much announced that everybody has to cut so that he can get money to build a wall. So every single government department has to cut their budget. No, that's no kidding. Every single government department has to cut their budget so that he can get money to build a wall. No, that's no joke. That's serious.
I am stunned into silence because I can't understand why this supersedes the life of the American people.
Man, the presidency, Boeing has plane that flying already. You understand what they're changing them for. You see, they're making the plan too complex. Leave the thing and then with a day. So if you don't leave it there, you got to spend the money. Come on, guys.
Yeah, well, you got...
Our theme for the evening, seemed to have been our intellectual ghettoism in the region. We graduate, as the late, great Bob Marley says, we build church and universities and we graduate thieves and murderers.
That man did good, eh?
Yes. And the more educated we become in this region, somehow, is the more corrupt we seem to be.
Because we use our knowledge to skirt the edge.
Exactly.
Just stay on the edge.
Learn the rules well so you can
break them
carefully. And then you say to someone, oh, it wasn't, well, why did you break the buttonhole? Oh, I didn't break the buttonhole. It was the button that had a crack on it, and we split hairs and we get into semantics and we do everything to salve our consciences and make us feel good so that when we go to bed at night, we can sleep comfortably. Hug up whatever we hug up at night and sleep comfortable and wake up in the morning and go out and do it all over again. And that is why the Antigua port. I think what's so funny?
I'm just enjoying it. You enjoy something, you laugh, you chuckle, you smile. Don't worry.
I wonder
when you're
what's
going, of course, I'll let you know.
Because I want to come right back to this Antigua port.
Yes.
And
oh my goodness.
We understand that Antigua is on the brink of handing over all its ports. Not one, not two, but all its ports to a company in the UK.
It's done.
Ports.
It's done. The agreement is in signed.
No, I know there was an MOU.
Yeah.
No. They're signed. The agreement signed.
Listen. We were just talking about semantics here.
You are going to somewhere.
I don't know. The signing of the MOU does not tell me that they have actually handed over the port.
Oh, really? Well, no, we changed that. Dominica changed that a long time ago.
You're here?
When we went to China and signed an MOU, that was all it took for the Chinese to walk in and take over the country. There was no document, nothing.
You understand?
The MOU was revealed to the public.
And what fascinates me about this, is that in the MOU, which I haven't seen, but I've heard from inside the cabinet, that in the MOU it says this company, which is based in England, next door to the Privy Council, it says, on the same street or adjoining street.
3 miles from the court.
Exactly. Will not just be given the port, but it's also going to be given all the properties adjoining the port, all the businesses that operate within that facility. They are going to be given the rights to collect every single dime that comes into Antigua through that port. It will go to them.
For the next 30 years.
For the next
30 years, yeah.
30 years. They will have total control over every single port in the tiny island of Antigua that has a population of around 60,000 people who depend on tourism for their existence. And you sign over the port to a corporation that is domiciled in London, England, the same place where you say we were supposed to take the court from, because you can't have justice from the Privy Council when it's all the way over there in England. And let me tell you something. This is not an original thought from me. This is from someone who wrote in dissent to the port being handed over to this company. And this is what was said in this letter of dissent, which was sent to the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. I said, Mr. Prime Minister, a few months ago, you were preaching to us about breaking the shackles of colonialism. You were telling us that the CCJ is too far away. You were telling us that we have the intellect to manage our own judicial affairs. You told us all of these things in support of moving towards moving to the CCJ instead of moving away from the Privy Council. And now you're telling us that we do not have the intellect to manage our own ports. We do not have the resources to manage our own ports. So you're turning it over to these people who are 3 miles away from the Privy Council, the same Privy Council that you were just fighting to break away from. No, when I read this thing, I thought
that was classic.
Yes,
that's classic.
This is and he laid into the PM. You know, and this is how we behave. This is. I look at it now in terms of our ethics and our morality. We flip flop according to whatever suits us. You know.
But Bev, how many other islands do you think are going to learn a lesson from this?
No, the other islands these people have already approached. And this is where I have a problem, right? I have a problem in other businesses. We talk about fair trading. We're talking about the whole question of avoiding monopolies. But 1 country, 2 countries, 3 countries, 4 countries will give the same business, the same rights. I mean, but we will jump down the next of a Digicel or a Flu about competition and about monopoly. Are we serious?
And then
the thing about these 2 companies, you know, see what you like about telecommunications company, you know, you have to have money, capital, because whenever the technology change, you have to change. You have no choice in that. You have to change. But these ports, they're going to collect all of the money.
Yes.
I mean, she's a bread man.
And in the 20, they'll collect every dime for 20 years.
30.
And in the 21st year, the government will get 6.5% of their net income.
Net.
But there is nothing to say what you're going to define as net income. And during those 20 years, the government will be responsible for maintenance and replacement of anything on the port.
Yes, you collected all the money, but the government paying all the expenses. Is the way I read this thing and thought to myself, no boy, nah.
Yes.
I need a contract like that.
And yet the company claims that was the toughest deal they negotiated with Antigua. Really?
So they want to tell them that they feel good.
Really?
Yeah. They want to make Antigua feel good.
They are saying that so that when they go to the other countries, they say, don't be as tough on us as Antigua was.
Sharon here is saying Grenada next.
This is why I get irritated and annoyed sometimes when I hear people talking about Venezuela, you know, because here it is a classic case. The company comes into the region and wants to take over the ports. Do you think that our prime ministers get together and say, what is going to be our approach to this company? What's the benefit to the region if this company take over the ports, and discuss it among themselves as rational, serious human beings who are responsible for guiding the region? Do you think they sit together and look at the ramifications of this and say, okay, if we're going to allow them in, this is how we're going to do it? Do you think they do that?
Beverly, but that goes down the same route of British American CLECO. Too big to fail. If we give all of these ports to this one company, and this company they create a belly up situation and they go belly up, what happens? I mean, till now we really haven't understood this.
Well, here's the other thing too that I have a problem with. I think there are certain national assets that should remain in the hands of nationals. Of the nation, correct. And your ports are one of those things that should remain in the hands of the nation. I don't care who say what, that's where it should stay. Because, I mean, here's the other thing. But you talk about them going belly up. What happens if you and them fall out or they have a stop? They could literally hold you to ransom by not allowing things to come in or not allowing things to leave.
Exactly.
You know, which is kind of like something that China pulled in places like Djibouti and those places as well, because they owned their ports. And so I just think that there's certain national assets that should not go in the hands of foreigners. I don't care who you are.
But we watch what happened in China.
I ain't finished with Antigua yet and what they give to these people, you know. In addition to all of those things, they also get some sweeping concessions for the 30 years, you know. no company tax, no whatever tax. And the other argument which was raised by this Antigua national against this selling of the port, the handing over the port, is that there is no guarantee that the Antiguans who operate small businesses within the facility that's going to be handed over to this foreign company, no guarantee that they're going to be allowed to carry on their business.
Yeah, because as part of the agreement, they will also operate businesses in there as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
remember, they're collecting every cent, you know. Don't forget they're collecting all the money.
Every dime.
So you can't let no other business go inside there to collect money. If the business go in there, it will be through them.
So
because the business will then be paying them.
Yeah.
So the Antigua government is supposed to get what, $84 million up front, and that's the only money they'll be getting until the 21st year.
Now tell me why they should not be tarred and feathered.
Oh, absolutely.
And then I hear your Prime Minister, Mr. Jerry George, I hear your Prime Minister. I don't know why people like to ask him questions when they don't know what they're talking about. Some journalists ask your Prime Minister about the impact this could have on the OECS, and he don't respond to that, you know. His response was how we've come to this stage now where a Prime Minister cannot talk for what he believes is best for his country without ramifications, without repercussions.
The Prime Minister is not owning no country, and that is the problem that we have. That the Prime Ministers go out and feel that they could say anything for us.
That is why, as the Prime Minister, tell the people that they have no obligation to help them after a natural disaster.
That's right.
But don't fool if eh? Global Port has already made a move to St. Vincent.
You know?
That's why he avoided answering the question. But I waiting. And he bounced around to the prince and thanked the prince. Hold on, and thank the prince for the £40 million that Britain gave to us for the new port. That's why he bunks the question.
Here's the bigger picture. There is a bigger picture. China is coming through on the west coast of Panama west coast of Nicaragua with a canal large enough to take ships that have not even been imagined. And they are going to end up on the Caribbean side of Nicaragua, where a 10 million person city is going to be built by China at that exit point. Then the Goat Islands arrangement with Jamaica will see the largest cargo port in the Western Hemisphere be constructed by China using the technology she has developed in the South Sea of China to build islands. Okay, so that's goods coming from China, now entering the soft underbelly of the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean. Okay, now here's the bigger picture for this takeover of our ports, which incidentally are our borders. Those goods have to be moved north and south, north to North America and south to South America, two of the largest markets in the world. The Caribbean's role in this is not as a consumer. We are too small.
Conduits.
We do not make a dent in the GDP of a country like China. However, we happen to be geographically located and as a string of pearls and ports between North and South America. So if cargo has to be deconstructed and then reconstructed, reassembled and repackaged and so on for onward, they need ports among the pearls. They already have it in Jamaica. And they're coming down the islands. And so they have got this British company to come in on their behalf to basically take over the ports of the Caribbean and turn them into transshipment points for China.
Yeah.
So this has absolutely nothing to do with the Caribbean. It has nothing to do with tourism. It has nothing to do with borders. It has nothing to do with even governments, because these islands will just become offshore ports. That is all. That's the bigger picture. It's going to unfold quite rapidly in another 3 to 4 years when the Nicaragua Canal begins to come to completion. So I really think that once again, and I guess maybe our role will be to go back to limbo dancing and calypso singing and playing and so forth, and to entertain the people. Remember Sparrow's song about, remember one of Sparrow's first songs, Gin and Dinah?
Gin and Dinah, Rosita and Clementina.
Okay, about Trinidadian women offering their goods to the sailors, etc., and so on and so on.
One of my favorite catchphrases is that we are waiting for Columbus to come discover us again. I say it all the time because we are moving like a people who going backwards. We ain't going forward.
But Columbus was an accident.
This exactly. Thank you.
This is not an accident. This is
too deliberate. This is deliberate.
This is a master plan.
And Ati, notice the fact that they use a company out of Britain. And it's Chinese, but they operate out of Britain, so that it looks acceptable. It's Britain. These people are clever.
It's not. The Chinese did that. Chinese behind it.
And the concessions to be given are not just to this company that's doing the purchasing upfront. It's to anybody they're working with.
Right, that's right.
So they come and offer you $84 million and take over your borders. Because again, Ati said that and pass over it very casually, the port or airports and seaports, that is how people enter and leave your country. And when we traveling within the region and land at some airports and seaports, they treat us like stray dog.
People still want to see my passport. I'm carrying a CARICOM passport and I'm entering a CARICOM port, and you want to see my passport, you want to know how long I'm staying, where I'm staying, what I'm going to do. What is this? What is this?
Who you're staying with? And the whole 9 yards. But you're going to turn over your port and all its operations.
People, Sharon here is saying back to slavery, this time under the Chinese.
It could be anybody at this stage. But let me say this. There's a big bassa, and it appeared last night again in Barbados over sandals, where the former administration in Barbados gave sandals certain concessions, which Mia Motley says is too much.
No.
They had the problem.
No. She said they agreed to those because those were already signed.
Right, but she did not share because they're signed.
Then sandals come back asking for more things, which she said they're not prepared to do.
Right. Well, she didn't. She said she agreed to it because they were signed, but if she had the chance to negotiate, they would not have gotten what they gotten.
Right.
She said that's what she had for. They had this problem, a still ongoing problem in Turks and Caicos. They went to Trinidad. They had to pull out of Trinidad. But this document already is signed. In other words, our own people get a tougher time.
Stick up in. Remember, Gaston wanted to throw sandals out of Antigua for the same thing.
Yes, for the same thing.
So don't bother talk about Barbados and Trinidad and leave out Antigua and Turks.
Yes, I had forgotten that actually.
The same Gaston Brown. Spit fire and brimstone to kick out sandals. For simple reason that he thinks sandals was getting too much concessions and not giving the country enough. And I am sure Antigua has benefited more than $84 million from Sandals.
Oh, absolutely.
In 1 year. Yeah.
No, it is crazy though, because it leaves you to ask yourself, why bother? Because these people, God no man, they think we are really foolish.
And the big fight is still on in Antigua to stop the construction of that airport on the island of Barbuda. That hasn't quieted down, it hasn't gone anywhere.
No, it hasn't gone anywhere.
Because again, the Prime Minister, by what process, decide to give away the people land to some foreign entity to come in and build an airport. To build it for whom? And we have to reinforce it again. Ports are your borders. That is how goods and people enter your country. Now, what are you giving these people your ports to bring in and to take out? And you cannot go and ask them anything because you don't own it anymore. You have no rights to it.
Now you see why the guy from Homeland Security on the CBS program was making the point about we are undermining the global architecture.
No, that is not the language, man.
What's the language?
A gaping hole.
Okay.
The international architecture. I know. I never forgot that statement. A gaping hole in the international security architecture.
Because then do you believe that those other countries are going to allow large numbers of their citizens to come as visitors to a country where the port is under the control of...
Well, Ati, we saw it happen. The moment they announced that plan and they signed it, Caribbean Carnival Cruises said goodbye.
Okay.
The next day, what the other cruises? A couple of
Princess, Holland America, Seabourn.
Yes, Holland America is the next one.
Yeah, because Princess is on the Carnival. They're all Carnival.
They're all part of Carnival.
No, but that's Carnival. There's another company. I can't remember the name of that company.
Yeah, there's another company in all 12 ships.
The Carnival is the largest one.
Yeah.
They own, because they bought out most of these other lines.
The others,
And 12 of them have said bye-bye to Antigua. Just so.
And part of it is because they said that they wanted to participate in the whole port thing before Global Ports came.
Is that confirmed, Bev, that the others have pulled out as well?
Yes.
Yes.
It's confirmed.
How much reading do Caribbean people do these days?
We do have
these
time.
Days?
Reading.
These days?
Listen, these days we just hear something and run with it.
Okay.
We don't have time to read.
Now, who is it said,
Mr. Killer?
Who is it said, if you want to hide something from a black person, put it in a book?
Because when especially these Chinese, write their MOUs and bring them to you, and you go and sign it without reading it, which our people in authority are want to do because they love the fine food and wine and all the trappings that goes with these meetings.
Is the trappings that they like more than the fine food and the wine?
Trappings, exactly.
That's why they get trapped.
Trappings, pun intended. All the trappings that go with these meetings. Enjoy it so much. That's when they finish, they say, oh, these are nice guys. It's Dr. Mitchell, Prime Minister in Grenada, who likes to talk about our friends in China. And every time I hear him say it, I'm like, I wonder if the Chinese say the same when they're talking about
well, the thing is, the Chinese may be his friends, doesn't mean that he is their friend.
True.
And that's why I say I wonder if the Chinese use the same language in the same context when they're talking about Grenada. Do they talk about our friends in Grenada? Because just because somebody come and hand you something, and I mean, we have so much history to warn us against these things. Not all skin teeth is laugh.
Old people may know that.
That's true.
Old people may know that now.
So just because somebody come and skin them teeth and give you $84 million, you think that make them your friend?
But this has been a very kind of sobering show so far this evening. Sobering in the sense of we are uncovering, as we should, the things that are just not working in our interests, starting with ourselves. Should we not try to leave George's listeners with a little kind of something to hold on to? What can we hold on to?
There is much to hold on to, and there is much hope, because the 6 of us here, I see Catherine has fallen off. I hope Brexit has not taken out her internet.
Maybe she break out.
Well, it's not just the half a dozen of us here who have concern.
No.
But what has happened worldwide, as we see happening in England, in the UK right now, the people will rise up and say, this is what we want. And those who don't want it, who are usually the people in the seat of authority, they do everything to frustrate people. But here is what we have to hold on to. The power resides with the people. And we cannot afford to give in. We cannot afford to give in.
But what makes a people powerful, Bev? What makes the power? What is the power that resides in the people? What is that? Is it something that we have to find, nurture, cultivate deliberately and share? Or is it just something that's there and going to be there for all time, no matter what?
It is something which is there and is going to be there. And again, you put it in the historic context. The slaves recognized that the power was in their hands. And the moment they recognized that, it was the beginning of the end for slavery. And it's not that it wasn't there. You just have to recognize that it is there and wake up and use it. Until that once the slaves recognized that, that was the beginning of the end. And we can look back in history in other situations. I have to refer to slavery because that is our history. But it's like we don't have anything fighting for today, a large majority of the people. There are some of us who see the danger and who understand that we are giving away what we gained. Our foreparents fought for it and gave it to us. And if we continue in the direction we're going, all we're doing is giving it away.
Somebody asked a question a few minutes ago about, what is there to hold on to? I think that might have been RT. Over the years, I've seen a lot of proverbs fulfilled. One of them is, the longest rope has an end. You all ever heard that? Yeah. And I'm clinging to that. That's one of the things I'm clinging to. And two, even though it may be frustrating for us at times, I just feel that there are people out there who can identify with what we're saying and what we're doing. And if anybody has any doubt about that, take a look at social media right now. There's somebody by the name of Elton Sylvester. And he is saying here, nice topic, panelists. This is so true. I'm listening to you from Toronto with 3 friends, one from St. Kitts, one from Antigua and Barbuda, and me, Grenadian. Really enjoying it here. See, we sometimes wonder if other people are listening. They are, RT, they are.
Yeah, I know. I just want for us to remind ourselves, honestly, that they are, so that in fact we don't let go.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Because we see in St. Vincent today, while it is a political matter, when the judgment was handed down, the people made it absolutely clear that we don't accept this. It's the ruling of the court, and we respect the court, and we know that we can't go and overturn the ruling, but we're letting the court know that we don't accept it.
Exactly.
You know, and this is what we have to do, because when you sit back and
do nothing,
and do nothing,
they
those
love
in
that.
authority, they say, okay, ain't nobody protesting, nobody saying anything, so we just move on. We go and kill another bird and kill another bird. And next thing you know, all them junk are dead and the dead meat stay on the ground. Stink up the place.
Deb, you'll have to translate that for me, please. I'm sorry.
No, sweet.
I love the way the world is made, you know. That's why there has to be a God, because God created the buzzards, as they are known in some areas, or carrion, as they are known in some areas, to eat the dead flesh on the ground, so that the earth doesn't become stink. In Jamaica, we call them the jankro, right?
Jankro.
So, yes, jankro. Yes. So when you look up and you see the jankro circling in the air, you know that there is dead meat down below.
Down with somewhere,
now
man.
It's somewhere there. Now, if somebody take a gun and shoot one of the jankro, and nobody protests, and then say, okay, everything is fine, and they go and shoot another one, and shoot another one, then the dead meat
whole place stink.
And the whole place stink.
A Janko, the Kobo, them had nothing to do.
I know.
And they call him a Trinidad.
Yes, Kobo, that's for sure.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
So the moment the first gun fire, we have to say, hey, what is going on out there? No. And put a stop to it.
Yeah.
Just like the Prime Minister in New Zealand has done with the shooting. This horrible shooting. She gets up and she's saying, It has happened. We can't do anything about what's gone, but we're dealing with the gun issue. We are not going to make guns so available at all. We're dealing with it one time. And that is the kind of approach we as citizens have to take. Don't sit back and let the perpetrators of these injustices and these ridiculous decisions and everything, don't sit back and let them think that what they're doing is okay, because it's not. And that is why I admire this person who wrote to the Prime Minister of Antigua and put it back in his face, everything that he was saying a few months ago about the CCJ.
I like that bad.
And now you have turned tail on it with the ports.
But you know, one of the Prime Minister's ministers wrote to him about his own concerns about the thing. But when I saw that, I said, you see the difference between the backbench system and ours? Because really and truly, he should take a stand. He should take a stand.
I mean, and people need to take a stand. I say it every time, you know, and it may not happen in my lifetime, but it is going to happen. The kind of party system that we have running our countries, it's going to die. It's going to go away because it doesn't work. It cannot work, and it cannot continue.
You know, we started a new series of programs here on Grenada Broadcast last week with some youngsters. These are youngsters who have been complaining bitterly because they feel that they have a lot to offer society, a lot to offer the country, but they're totally frustrated. You know, they can't get their projects up and running because of the sort of environment that they're operating under. And today, this afternoon, they did their second edition. The program is called Woke. It's on Thursday afternoons at 4 o'clock. We run it live. And I'll tell you, when you sit and listen to these kids, you feel such hope, you know? You feel their pain. They're frustrated. But boy, when you listen to what they're saying, you say, you know, there got to be better days ahead. And I'm trying to provide all the encouragement I can for them because they just keep running into brick walls.
And it's one of the things which this letter to Prime Minister Brown pointed out that you're selling off the ports, but you're spending so much money every year on scholarships to send youngsters to pursue training in maritime studies. So what's the point?
You want me to tell you what the point is? I remember one of the programs we did on corruption. It just pointed out that certain people like large projects. You could easily lose $1 or $2 million and just not missing.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
No, I always remember that. That's he gave 3 things, and that was one of them.
Yeah. And it is true. Yeah. It is true. Look at Clicker. Look how many millions were moving, and the thing have to collapse before people realize.
Mm-hmm.
And now our collective governments want to take taxpayers' money to pay it back.
Well, they're doing that in Barbados.
Instead of going and find the thieves and getting the money from the thieves, one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And we keep missing something that I guess some of the luminaries and visionaries like the Dimasses and so on kept urging us to pay attention to, that there are certain things that we can do together that we cannot do alone. The rationalization of the location of industry, certain agricultural activities and so forth. Some of the countries are better suited for that. And all of that work was in fact done. Look, now we're sitting on the cusp of let's say a whole new frontier of agriculture based on a value chain around cannabis and hemp.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of seeing a regionally coordinated, colluding, cooperating approach to it, every single one of these countries are trying to get ahead of every single other one.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, hey, look, but there's certain things we can do. It's like, Blue Mountain coffee can be done best on the Blue Mountains in Jamaica. So-and-so could be done best in Belize. So-and-so could be, but they don't trust each other. They don't like each other.
I don't think it's just trusting out. It's just greedy.
They're greedy, but they're stupid too.
Exactly.
No, yes, they are. But their concern is about winning the next election.
Yeah, but that's stupidity.
It is stupidity. So their only focus is on the number of people that it will take to get them past the post first.
Yeah.
That's the only focus.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The rest of us.
In other words, we need to learn how to count again. We need to know that first past the post means you could win an election by 1 vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
There's something wrong with that.
Yeah. Those of us who are talking about vision, nation building, looking ahead, moving forward, they say, oh, you can't stay there. My concern is upcoming.
Is only one mathematics that is learning. The mathematics of election day.
Mm-hmm.
The only maths they care about.
Exactly.
But it just goes to show, Patty, that you talk about if we work together. The Caribbean is losing tremendously in cruise tourism. Why? And this is one of the examples here.
Yeah.
Because each Caribbean country has a different rate of for passenger head that comes off.
Yeah. We're competing with each other?
We're competing with each other. So some people have $2.50, others have $4.50, others have $6. Now, if the Caribbean had stood together and decided X, then the countries with the smaller populations and stuff would have benefited. And those with more would benefit too.
Yeah.
No, we each go into the discussion and to the negotiation and lose, because all that needed to happen is that the bigger countries with more clouds will negotiate on behalf of the smaller country who don't have the same capacity. And the cruise ships can pay it, The cruise ships can pay it. The Caribbean remains still the most attractive,
lucrative,
and attractive
cruise
because that's where the passengers want to come.
Yeah, that's why Carnival is recreating the Caribbean on its ships.
Yeah.
Royal Caribbean.
You know how I vex over those things. This is not the Caribbean. It's the Royal Caribbean. I mean, really?
Yes, right in the face, right in our faces.
In with face.
Why not?
Right in our faces.
In with face. I tell you.
And we go down bended knee to ask that same Royal Caribbean to come to the Caribbean.
Yes.
And they're showing you off on the ship and showing you the entire Caribbean, you know.
Yeah,
well, Margaret will know.
Caribbean.
I just had another friend who passed through here, and the ships tell them basically where to go.
Yeah,
so just which ports they come off in, tell them what to do on the ground.
Basically what happens is like, you know, the day before you go to any port, you know, they'll have like, you know, an overview of the port. They'll give you like things or places that you could go shop, because I guess, you know, they have agreements with the
with certain things,
which is what I noted in one of the articles that I saw on the Antigua thing, that part of the reason why Carnival is mad has to do with the concessions and stuff as well. Because I think I know they have agreements with a number of stores and other people and stuff. So they sort of like give you into the year, you know, you go to this place, you're going to get the best deal, basically what they do. But they do a sell on the port, you know, before you get off. And plus the tour operators that they organize with. So you could basically get off the ship, jump in a bus and go your merry little way and never really have to do anything. Unless you're adventurous like me. I mean, you know, we get off and... No, we do that. I mean, the only time I you know, I have done cruise tours, like when I'm with my mom, because, you know, she can't move around as fast. I'll do that with her. But, you know, other times we just get off, particularly if it's in the Caribbean, and just walk out and deal with the local folks right there, as opposed to doing the ship tours. And you tend to come off better when you do that, as opposed to doing the ship tour from experience. But, you know.
So George, but basically, we have a few minutes left. Any comments on if you want to share with us? I just saw one from Catherine. She said her laptop just shut down on her. She don't know what happened.
Yeah, okay. I haven't seen that. But somebody named Kipling was asking a question. Oh, by the way, Sharon was saying to you, Bev, she agrees with you, but our people seem to have become cowards. Who is prepared to stand up to the wrong that is being done? She's right. Now, there's another question here from Kipling. Kipling says, so, is that judgment the end for Ewart Lane, or can he appeal again? Well,
it's the Privy Council.
Yeah, that's a final court of appeal.
Where else to go?
Well, you know, I read a statement which supposedly came from Mr. Lane, which sort of gave an indication that he's really not through with this whole process.
Yeah, that he has other things.
Okay. And I hope that he's going to appear on our program on Sunday. He's coming in on Sunday morning to do Sundays with George Grant. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to find out at that time what exactly his intention is. Because as I understand it, one judge had suggested that he go back to the High Court and get them to, take another look at the principle that was used to arrive at the former decision, which caused all this brouhaha. But I think the other...
How you take it? How you open about that case in the court system?
Pardon me?
Yeah,
no, I'm trying to figure out how you... I don't understand how to do that.
I don't know. Yeah, because I mean, it
was a 4-1 ruling. So what the one judge said can't be acted on.
No.
Yeah, but I don't think so, because it's a majority ruling, and so it stands.
The other 4 essentially said, "That's it, buddy."
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe somebody who's more knowledgeable of the law there can explain that. But I can see another person bringing a case as that, but I couldn't see him coming back. Exactly. Yeah, you know, another person bringing a similar case.
Because he has not necessarily, he has to bring a completely different case.
Yeah,
bring back the same case.
Yeah. I mean, another person who faces the same thing, I'm sure, can appeal it, but I don't think that he can. And in which case, if that person won, then probably, you know, there'd be the precedent. And I don't know. Maybe, you know,
that's how it works.
Expert. Yeah.
No, that's how it works. Exactly what you just said there.
All right. Well, I guess that's going to do it, guys.
Okay, people. Buenas noches.
Okay, let me just say goodbye to our listening and viewing audience. Thank you very much once again for joining us for this edition of Mek We Chat. Next week, God willing, we should be back with much more to chat about. So long.